So NiKo just had one of his worst events of all time, and I'm going to make a video on that specifically, but I wanted to talk about G2 here, because G2 against Eternal Fire, I think exposed a lot of the problems that G2 has when they're not heavily out-aiming teams and just able to kind of frag their way out of their problems. I want to give credit to Eternal Fire where it's due. I think maybe Launders was right, maybe racism is good. Okay, I can't even say that with a straight face, but I think maybe Launders was right. I really like Eternal Fire. I think they don't get nearly enough credit, and I think after this win versus G2, maybe they'll start getting more credit for their form. But this game, I really wanted to focus on G2 because I feel like their team, they just are not on the same page so often. So here, we have Snax moving his way up Cat, Hunter mollied and smoked Connector, and then most of the time when you see a flash into ladder, you see people cross and kind of throw it. I think you throw it from the other side of this bench so that it lands right here. Now in this case, I think this must be an anti-strat because this flash is going to land a lot deeper and that's going to blind someone that's playing potentially an angle like Xantares is playing like this, that's a little deeper. So Hunter's going to throw this flash. The problem is Wakadia hears it, sees it bounce, dodges it, gets the kill on Snax, and there is no second option. There is no alternate plan. They just have to cancel everything they had. Now they have a flash and a nade. I mean, you may as well, it's almost like save at this point. Despite it being round 3, you're playing against MP9s. Ladder is a place an MP9 is likely to want to play. They're doubled up in ladder, so obviously Eternal Fire had a pretty good read here. And this is one of the reasons you might see NiKo have some bad games, is because the plan A failed, Snax take Connector failed, so now NiKo's just lurking into window with no pressure anywhere, no utility. They're in full panic mode. And of course it's tough. NiKo's just gonna get shot in the back. It's tough to be peeking the right angles in this type of situation. Look, I'm not trying to hate on G2 or Snax. I think there's plenty of things they do well, but I think this game against Eternal Fire was just a perfect example of players not being on the same page. Now this is a round, and I've praised Snax's calling when he's made good reads, and I think this is another pretty solid read. They go 4-man mid control. They have a kind of a half buy. They've got Hunter throwing a market window smoke and a couple of flashes as they move up Cat. They kind of just bust up Cat. They delayed enough time so it felt like an A hit might be coming over, and in fact Eternal Fire kind of overcommitted to the A side of this play, which means it was only Major alone in apartments. They were able to catch him completely alone there, and that might be an anti-strat in its own to try and catch them alone in those types of situations. The only problem is, 3v3, they just end up losing, and that's kind of the reality of these situations. Sometimes you can call your way into a very good situation. I think that was a pretty good setup, a pretty good play, and it just doesn't work out. That's totally fine. One of the problems though, if that was an anti-strat, as in they think that Major very often gets into a B apartments, and then after getting into B apartments, they fully rotate off of B, and maybe G2 think they can catch Major doing that. Sometimes you have to be careful, because if you do that against a force buy, or with a force buy, you're not all that likely to win that round in particular, and then if you don't win that round, they might adjust out of that standard play. Now, one of the things that Eternal Fire are doing quite often in this game is they actually play very stacked towards A for the majority of this game, because, well, G2 is a team that hits A quite often, so it actually makes a lot of sense for them to be a little bit more A heavy. Now, the previous round, they made the play. Here, they're playing pretty slow in middle, just trying to counter any mid aggression, which makes a lot of sense. They use a lot of utility to not get that much control, but that's totally fine. They had plenty of utility to work with because they had the half buy in the previous round, so it's not really the end of the world. They just have to have a clear idea of what they want to do in near the end of the round, and they want to fake the same play. So they've got Hunter in towards apartments. He's going to throw the window smoke. They've got 3 players in towards middle. Part of the problem here, though, is they unfortunately don't have ladder control because of this really well-timed smoke from Wakadia. So when Hunter starts throwing this utility, which he's going to start throwing in a minute here, there's no real pressure for anybody to rotate, because again, Wakadia is still in middle here. So in a second, Hunter is going to start throwing his utility. There's the window smoke, and he's going to throw flashes. It's obvious G2 can't be hitting B here. They have to be going A, so there's no reason for them to rotate. They were already in a doubled up setup on A with Xantares playing sandwich. I think Xantares has been here a couple of rounds already. Seems to be something they're trying to catch G2 with. Woxic has no reason. Woxic doesn't rotate at all. He just kind of sits around, so the fake doesn't do anything. And then they end up actually killing Wakadia on Cat here. Now the problem is, because of that slow mid control that they went for, they can't go back B. I think if they had a smoke here, they would probably seriously consider doing something like smoking top con or smoking in con, mollying window, and then just going fast around up Cat and just splitting B, because they do have Hunter in apartments throwing the fake, and they killed Wakadia on Cat, which really it's obvious that Wicadia thinks it's A. It's very obvious that it's A once Wicadia makes contact on 3 players in connector. I wouldn't be surprised if they would consider going back towards B, but they're just not in a position to be able to do it. They have to clear out jungle. Now, the problem I have here is just the spacing. So part of it is that I don't understand why Nico didn't molly jungle from ramp. It's not the easiest molly. It's not like perfectly consistent, but usually, I mean, you can definitely get to here in molly ramp. Almost every team throws that quite often, and that would allow them up connector in this kind of hectic situation. But instead, Nico comes out ramp, makes contact, and then he's going to use his molly on ticket, which I just don't feel like is all that effective. It's not the end of the world. The bigger problem is that, I mean, that would be fine. Maybe they didn't ask him for it, or maybe they asked him not to do it. But then on the other side, Snax and Malbs are just completely split. Snax goes outstairs, Malbs is swinging on jungle, and I think there's a reasonable chance that the idea is that in scrims, when they throw that B fake, maybe the mid window player is almost always rotated off, because if the fake works, the window player is supposed to rotate. And in the case that mid window player is rotated, especially if it's a rifler, Malbs has a pretty good chance of actually winning that duel and putting G2 in a pretty good situation. But in this case, because the fake was so ineffective, there was no reason for Woxic to rotate, and then the gap there where you have Snax and Malbs kind of split, not clearing the same angle together, which is usually fine, but in this case, it kind of amplifies what is a problem, right? Where they have this kind of gap where they have to win an aim duel, and if they don't win that aim duel, the entire round absolutely falls apart. And that's exactly what happens. So when I see G2 like to hit A quite often, I mean, this is one of the ways that they do it, and it's because of players like m0NESY, like Malbs, like Nico, that can duel out A very effectively. And it's tough to defend A if you only have one player, especially Calyx. When I've watched demos, I think Calyx is a player that typically plays in a site, maybe a little more than a lot of other players. I've seen games where he's played inside of site when his team is fighting for mid, like multiple rounds in a row. And if you're G2, you might want to try and actually isolate that, especially against a team like a player like Calyx that is doing that, or any other team that plays in a site quite often. Spirit do that quite often. I think a Chopper plays in A very often when his team is fighting mid. Usual rule, by the way, is if your team is fighting mid, that you play jump spotting. And you can see shots like this. I mean, Malbs and m0NESY are just going to lurk their way out ramp as G2's going for mid control, and they're going to spot the jump spot and then just spam him down through ticket. Instant kill their way, 5v3. Malbs gets traded by Xantarez, but then m0NESY hits a really nice shot right back. And so when G2 is winning their duels, these types of plays are insanely effective. And there's nothing wrong with doing them. Obviously, like, you have to take the good with the bad to some extent. This type of round looks very effective, and it was a quite effective play, but especially if you don't have perfect utility, you can go for these sorts of plays, and sometimes they're going to go well, and sometimes they're going to go wrong. Again, I think you have to take the good with the bad. However, I think G2 maybe lean a little too much into these types of plays at times, or maybe they don't lean too much into these plays, and it's just that Nico is having a really rough event, and if Nico was winning gunfights as he usually does, then they would be feeling a lot better about it. But by the way, that round win was right off the back of a pause, which someone actually did the math on, and Taz, I can't remember Taz's exact win rate off the back of pauses, but Blades wasn't actually that good. Blades was closer to 50%. However, Blade did call like 3 times more pauses than any other coach. So his was a little closer to average, whereas I think there was some coaches that had like a 70% win rate after a pause, which was quite interesting actually. But into this round, you've got more mid control coming out of G2. They've got the standard, well actually they've thrown 3 smokes to begin with here, and they're going to go for a play out A. Nico in towards Palace, m0NESY with the op working out here. Snax almost gets that spam through the window smoke on a Xantarez, does 90 damage. That's a nice little play, actually, just being completely ready for that molly when it does show up, especially because Eternal Fire are throwing it quite late. So the A hit's going to come out. Hunter's dropping utility, which, if you remember, not that long ago, there was a clip from FaZe where they heard a molly drop at the back of Palace from under balcony and decided to call something off of it. So that type of utility dropping, well, I think mollies are a little easier to hear, but that type of thing can actually get heard, I think. But they end up going for the attack out A. So it's a double up on A, but this is a really well-timed play though, because Nico's gonna toss a molly just at the same time as those flashes pop. So Malbs gets out, Calyx is sitting in a molly, gets taken down immediately. Woxic does get the kill on a m0NESY, which turns into a 4v4. And then the round kind of goes a little bit sideways. And it's hard to show exactly how this goes sideways. I'm going to try and show it from a third-person POV because I think this might be the best way to show it. So m0NESY's at the back here with the bomb. He gets killed, which means someone's going to have to go back and grab the bomb. However, they do have 1 minute and 30 seconds left, and they have quite a bit of utility. They have no smokes, but they have 2 mollies. They've got 5 flashes or 6 flashes or something, and they've got multiple nades. They have plenty of options in the book. Now, what's going to happen here, they're going to toss a molly towards CT, a whole bunch of utility towards CT, that's fine. Then Malbs is going to swing on jungle, which I think is totally fine, but I'm guessing what happens in practice is that m0NESY didn't die with the bomb, so Hunter swings with him. And they have 2 players swinging jungle, and they can ensure that there's a trade. Then they have Snax, who actually was just at bottom con, and maybe he's called that the jungle player's right side window, because I'm not sure exactly how this happens, but he does see this player in window a second ago. He gets shot at from Wakadia, naded from inside of window, so I'm not sure, maybe he called he was right side window or something, but Wakadia throws that nade, immediately comes over here. Snax is staying bottom con to fight window. So you have Malbs just swinging out with no support because Nico's got a flash out. He's just way ahead of everyone else, and he's going to end up dying. You have no trade coming out. Then Hunter just gets killed from Woxic in through CT spawn, and Nico is spotted in Palace already. The flash ended up being kind of, wow, that nade, oh my god, that nade from Hunter doesn't kill Woxic, almost kills him, and then it actually gives him an opportunity to get a kill. That's honestly just unlucky. Then you have this situation. Nico's been spotted out in Palace. Snax, they know he's in connector. They're both kind of trapped. They both have no support. They're just screwed, really, in this situation. There's very little that they have the opportunity to do, and it ends up going very poorly. So that's kind of a small thing. I think the biggest problem is that Hunter goes back to grab the bomb. Either Malbs could wait, or it makes the most sense to me, although maybe someone will disagree, that Hunter swings out, they deal with the jungle player, and then molly jungle, and then go back and grab the bomb after. Or Snax could be coming out connector with them, or Nico could even be peeking out Palace, or they could wait for Nico to throw the flash also. And by the way, if they wait for Nico to throw the flash, maybe Snax is near top con to actually support them as well once that flash pops. But so maybe it's just on Malbs. I really don't know, but there's multiple ways that round could have been played that probably would have won them the round, but it just didn't happen. So round 8, they're already down 6-1. This is map 2, by the way, not map 1. So already you've got Eternal Fire probably feeling pretty confident, and map 1 was very weak for G2, so they're probably not feeling too great about the situation, and you're going for a 4-man mid control, which is fine. m0NESY went for the play in towards apartments, but he just got dunked by a nade, didn't manage to grab a kill, and he will actually, I think, grab a kill here in a second onto Woxic, which is really what you're looking for. They go 3 players into connector, and they've got decent control. Again, they've used most of their utility, but that's kind of what you're expecting in these sorts of situations. m0NESY is going to be the only one that has any utility to actually work with, and they end up actually going 5 through middle. And one of the things to note about this round is they went for this play in towards B. m0NESY's been making noise here the majority of the round, so they know EF know that there's at least 1 player in B apartments, and based on the way the utility and the spams have been done, for example, someone has been spamming at the same time as a smoke was thrown, there's at least 3 players in middle, and Eternal Fire probably know that. So you can actually see Eternal Fire are kind of a little worried about A, but not really. They're actually pretty much stacked in towards this mid play. They seem to have a pretty good understanding that the majority of G2 is in mid, and if there is a player towards A, it's one guy. So we're not going to worry too much about that. We're going to focus on the mid play, which ends up in a situation like this one. Now, you have a nade being thrown by Snax for Nico to come through the smoke, and 2 other players want to come with him, but they're late. So Nico ends up getting killed, and then Wakadia does, I think, just a bunch of damage to 2 other players. The thing is, I think Nico actually has the right timing here. I think it's the other players that have the wrong timing, because Nico ends up dying, which is fine. That's a kill Nico probably gets the majority of the time. So that's one that, you can probably rely on Nico usually getting. But the problem is that once Hunter and Malbs actually get into Cat, the timing on the smoke was off. So that they waited a little bit too long. So even if they hadn't had to stop to actually fight Wakadia, they still probably would have had that gap. The bomb still wouldn't have been up Cat. They would have had to re-smoke it. And maybe they re-smoke it generally because they get that kill on Wakadia, and then they have the time instead of m0NESY being worried about window or something. But the timing was just kind of off there, I feel like. Nico was in the right place. 2 other players were a little far behind. I'm not really sure why. And they end up getting kind of screwed by by just the fact that that smoke went down a couple seconds earlier than they were ready for. The resmoke a couple seconds earlier than they needed to or normally do. Then Snax just whiffs a shot in the back that could have maybe won them the round, but maybe it wouldn't have made any difference, and Major ends up winning the round 7-1. We've heard that scoreline before. And then you have another half buy coming up from G2, so there's really not any perfect solution to any of this type of thing. When you're in a half buy, you have to take kind of risky plays, but one of the things they do is when they've been taking mid, they've been doing so fairly safely. They've been throwing plenty of utility to make sure that they aren't giving Eternal Fire any free kills, but that means when they go for like kind of a fake mid control and they don't throw any flashes, and I think maybe one of their footsteps was heard or something. Wakadia is so ready for this. I thought for a second maybe Wakadia heard a footstep, but I think he just goes out towards mid, clears it. There's no flashes, no counter utility. There's the nade through the smoke. Wakadia immediately just turns around and knows that something's up towards B. They even rotate a third player towards B. So Hunter's sitting outside A with utility, and partially probably because Eternal Fire had stacked A a couple of times, right? Maybe they're thinking that it's about time for G2 to start trying to go for a B hit, especially with pistols or like a half buy, which is, I'm guessing they're expecting this type of half buy after there was no bomb plant. They're probably expecting this, that they're just kind of set up towards B. Then a couple of smokes get thrown towards A, but by the time, you know, they're not actually pulling a full rotate. They pull kind of a partial rotate, and before anyone can actually get out of apartments, Eternal Fire already has 3 players back here, and although G2 get 1 kill, that's simply obviously not enough to entry when you have 3 players on B, leaving Hunter into a 1v4 with no real chance of winning. So round 10, and this game, it gets better. It does get better. Snax, unfortunately, messes up a smoke, which is, you know, never what you want to see, but it does happen. It happens to everyone once in a while. m0NESY throws the window smoke. That's fine. That means they have to delay their mid control slightly. m0NESY's not going to be here to throw flashes for Snax to get out right at the very beginning of the round, which actually might have saved his life there because there was a nade, but I think the timings get slightly thrown off because in a different world where Snax is out slightly faster, he would actually potentially be able to use that nade to actually spot someone bottom mid. Like, he could actually see Woxic potentially, but Woxic is just peeking underpass, and Hunter is going at probably what is his relatively normal pace towards underpass here, but the rest of the team is slightly delayed, so Hunter ends up dying. I mean, that happens time to time, kind of regardless. That's going to happen from time to time. Now, one of the reasons I thought they might be going for that B fake on the first gun round is because maybe they think that Major has a tendency to be very aggressive in B apartments, right? I thought that would make a lot of sense, and it definitely would. And this is the type of play that maybe they were expecting, right? Major's literally in a 5v4. After his team went from full mid control, he just went straight out B, and he's basically in T-spawn here. So maybe they were expecting this type of play to come out from him a little bit more regularly. Major actually could have killed m0NESY, decides not to, and then Malbs just kills him for free. So all of a sudden, we're right back into a 4v4. However, there's not that much control that G2 actually get out of that. Major can give his team the information that there's 3 people mid. G2 wouldn't be able to hit B before a rotate could get there, so it's you know, it's not worth the timing of even trying. NiKo throws a bit of a fake, but Woxic is actually... One of the things is Woxic has been playing very well recently, and when your Opera's playing very well, he can do this type of play where he can go for that aggressive, he jumped across onto the balcony apartments. He knows that, like, look, if they swing on me, I'm getting at least 1, so it's not the end of the world, and I can make these kind of risky but aggressive plays. That's what makes m0NESY go so good, right? Because he knows if he has an op in his hand, he's getting at least 1 every time. It doesn't even matter. But plenty of options from G2. Really nice double peek on a Xantarez to get the kill. m0NESY gets the trade because Wakadia was trying to swing out window. A lot of the time these rounds they kind of fall apart in situations like that where, well, maybe Xantarez gets that initial kill, so m0NESY pivots to try and support, and then Wakadia gets a second kill because they had to try and make up for the gap that wouldn't have happened if Xantarez hadn't gotten that first kill. And that's why I feel like some of these rounds have fallen apart the way they have, because maybe G2 isn't quite as ready for kind of option B and option C as compared to other teams, because, well, G2 has m0NESY, Malbs, and NiKo to entry, right? And they've got Hunter as well. Like, generally, you're going to find that you're probably getting entries in straight up duels much more often than you're not. But if you're in a tournament where NiKo's just not fragging quite how he usually does, and maybe Malbs isn't either, I haven't looked at his stats, but if your players just aren't picking up kills they usually do, then you're not quite ready to adjust in the same way. But round 11, 8-2. I mean, 8-4 is a reasonable scoreline if they could actually make it happen. However, it's there's not that much that G2 actually had to build on in the majority of this half, right? Kind of, they had some ideas, but things were kind of just going terribly wrong constantly. But this time around, they have Malbs and NiKo towards A ramp, probably going to do something fairly similar to what we saw before. They might even drop smokes over for someone to throw. I thought they would try and go for a double lurk out here at some point, but it looks like that's not actually the plan. It's actually, there will be some, oh, it was going to be Malbs was going to throw smoke up to NiKo most likely, but here's the timing. Woxic comes close ramp, Calyx comes close up as well, and that's a kill Malbs gets the majority of the time. He actually gets the first shot off on Calyx. I don't even think Calyx is quite ready for this. This is just, yeah, I mean, it's a nice shot from Calyx. Reasonable shot from Calyx, but I think Malbs probably usually finds that kill himself. Unfortunate for him. So NiKo is probably looking to throw some, maybe a jungle smoke. Maybe a jungle smoke makes a lot of sense. But because they split up, it's just not a great situation. And then Woxic is also going to hit a pretty nice shot onto NiKo here to deny the trade back. And then you've got a 3v4. You do have Hunter making his way up connectors, so they're actually in a pretty decent position here. And Calyx is lit, so I'm guessing G2 most likely win this round. In fact, it's obvious now that they do. There was another round, though, that kind of went sideways pretty quickly off of, well, one slight whiff. I wouldn't really call it a whiff from Malbs necessarily, but it's definitely a kill he's going to get the majority of the time. And if we look at the last round of the half, this is, again, kind of vintage G2. So I don't know. I don't want to be too harsh on Snax, although I've been relatively harsh. To some extent, I think players just weren't winning necessarily duels that they usually win. But this time around, you've got Snax going pretty quickly out middle. You want to throw this in sometimes to get a player down middle very quickly to catch the opposing team off guard. Snax has the jump on Xantares, but loses the duel. I'm not sure how often Snax wins that. Snax is kind of, statistically, he's kind of a Hooksy-esque player recently, but you again have, it's basically the same round as they had on round 4. Like, they've got 3 players waiting in here towards apartments. They've got Hunter coming through underpass and Snax going through mid. Snax dies again, this time even earlier in the round, and that means that they have to make a choice, and Malbs makes the choice that he wants to catch the player jump spotting. Doesn't quite land the shot, but they try and accelerate because they know Wakadia has been very aggressive off Cat, but Wakadia has played a very, very solid game so far in terms of being in the right spot at the right time, which means he's going to get back in towards pillar much faster than they're expecting, right? Malbs is thinking he's going to catch Wakadia crossing to the pillar. No, Wakadia is already there, but Malbs just hits a very quick shot to take down Wakadia, and m0NESY hits a shot as well. You end up in a 3v3. Actually, it's NiKo that hits a shot as well before getting traded. You end up in a 3v3. Hunter in middle actually catches a timing on Calyx and just narrowly kills him before he gets around the corner here, turning into a 3v2, and they can quickly rotate over towards A because they do have that smoke. I mean, they would do this either way, but they do have some utility left over this time. They didn't drop it or dump it, all of it right at the beginning of the round, so they actually can have a second option here. Then Major just throws a really, really nice nade that lands directly on top of Malbs, who they probably called Malbs was dinked, and so he probably has a decent idea of what's going on there. Hunter ends up getting, I mean, Woxic is just on one, honestly, recently. He's just like one-tapping people, insta-giving people all over the place. Then m0NESY 1v2, and honestly, watching this live, I was just like, dude, this is going to be another round loss. Like, m0NESY is unbelievable in clutches, but at the same time, that just felt like Eternal Fire's game. Now, Woxic has a nice little play here, smokes the cross, and he can also defuse the bomb behind the smoke with that cross. And m0NESY, if he had not hit that immediate first op shot, that would have been a very sketchy situation because you shoot once, maybe the guy's lurking his way around the other side of the smoke, maybe he's going stairs to peek you. Like, do you spam that multiple times? I guess probably you have to, but it's just, it ends up being a very awkward situation after you miss that first shot. But obviously m0NESY being m0NESY, he's just gonna hit him in the first shot, defusing the bomb straight through the smoke easily, as if the smoke wasn't even there. So I haven't watched the second half here, actually. I watched the majority of the first half, not the second half, but watching this pistol round, Hunter dies unfortunately. Very nice shot from Wakadia. Again, Eternal Fire individually are just having really good games here, and they have been for a while. I mean, Eternal Fire, again, I don't think they've been getting as much credit as they deserve. God, that was just a normal shot, right? Mobs is supposed to get that kill, but just, you ever watch someone's aim and it's just so clean? It's just like, there was never a second where they weren't going to get that kill. Like that, it was just like, they could have shot at any point in the 2-second window where that guy was in the air and he was getting that kill. He just tracked his head perfectly. I don't know, there's something about that that's just so smooth, dude. I just love watching it. 2v4. This is really on Major, probably to find a nice shot here because Wakadia had already been spotted. Even though Wakadia had already dinked the mobs, it's still... Oh boy. All right, that was close. That was close. m0NESY almost got the knife kill, but that's a pistol round victory. I mean, what you really want to see, obviously, is both pistol rounds being traded, which is exactly what happens. And then you have pretty much the full eco here from Eternal Fire. And although G2 are well known for their ability to lose to pistols, usually they lose, I feel like, more when they're on T side than when they're on CT side to pistol forces. Although I could be completely wrong about that. But I didn't expect them to lose there because that wasn't a force. That was mostly Glocks, right? And there are some famous quotes about losing to Glocks and managers, but I've never actually heard those quotes. I've only heard them typed, so I actually don't know what it sounds like. So when I quote it, it probably sounds super weird, but I don't know why I brought that up. Anyways, Hunter on Cat, mobs in towards ladder. This is actually a fairly similar setup to what we saw from Eternal Fire. This kind of like almost doubled up in ladder setup that, I mean, Eternal Fire played a straight up double up in towards ladder, but if there was mid control going on, Hunter might back up into ladder and they might play doubled ladder. But in this case, you have Snax holding B alone. Basically no utility. I'm not sure if he threw an early smoke or he just had nothing. I mean, if you remember back to FaZe, when they had that comeback versus Liquid, one of the pivotal rounds was a round where Karrigan solo held B. He went solo B, he didn't have to hold it, but he went solo B with a 5-7 and had his team stack A with guns. Sometimes you just take those risks, you know? Sometimes you just have to be willing to take those risks. Now, again, as I mentioned, that Eternal Fire were hitting some really nice shots, and sometimes that's just the reality of the situation where things go wrong because they almost never go wrong in this way. Well, here's a way that things can go wrong. Woxic throws some utility, and then he throws a bullet directly into m0NESY's face. That's great. I love to see it if you're m0NESY. That's just unbelievable. Then the B pop comes out at the same time. So you do have a fast rotate, but Hunter's clearly not expecting them to be quite that close. And then he ends up in a decent gunfight, actually. It's unfortunate, though, because Snax is playing so passive here that, well, I mean, because he has an MP9 and no utility, he has to play so passive that he doesn't even get the first kill. If Snax gets that first kill, I think there's a reasonable chance they can win this round, but unfortunately not. Actually, maybe they would have been screwed anyways because I think Wakadia could get an angle on Snax without actually being visible to Hunter, so it almost certainly would have been a trade. But the round kind of goes terribly, terribly, terribly wrong pretty quickly here. Now, it was a bonus round, so you're expecting some sort of like gambles, and you're kind of fine with that type of situation. But at the same time, you did have m0NESY with an op, which is kind of what you're gambling on, right? You're gambling, you're saying m0NESY's gonna hold A, we're gonna play fairly stacked on the B and mid side, and m0NESY with the op is just gonna lock down A, and if everything goes wrong, it goes wrong on the A side, so we have to retake A, and m0NESY can even, you know, cut and run at some point and just save if he needs to, right? I think part of the play is you're really hoping to hold on to that op if that round goes wrong, you know? Otherwise, if they didn't invest in that op, they might have, maybe, could they afford to go for a buy here in this round if they didn't buy that op? They might be able to afford it, but obviously they can't because m0NESY's completely broke. Did they win with, yeah, they won with 5 alive on the second round, so they didn't necessarily need to go for that op. But now you've got basically pistols, no armor, some unupgraded pistols as well, a couple of kills. I think you'd be pretty happy with if you're G2 if you get a couple of kills there. They get one, do they get a second? They only get one kill there. I think it's fine. It's not the end of the world, but that means that into the first gun round, they actually have to do something. They kind of basically have to win this round. Why did I say that? It's 10-6. They had to win this round anyways. Sometimes, man, sometimes I question myself. G2, guys, they're down 10-6. They're going to have to eco after this, making it 12-6. They have to win this round. Why? Because they didn't kill more than one player in the previous round. Oh my God. Dude, it's like this. How much credit, or how much can you say G2 really misplayed when the misplays are like, they're just getting owned like this? Does he even see NiKo? He sees his arm. He sees his freaking arm and just insta-gives him. NiKo doesn't see a pixel of Xantares, just gets absolutely blasted. NiKo could even think that he just got fucking spammed. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Okay, now you actually have a pivot back towards B. Maybe they have some sort of tell? They actually... Okay, I thought they were full pivoting into a triple B setup. Oh my god. They're actually just pivoting m0NESY over so m0NESY can try to hold on. They're probably expecting that Eternal Fire might try and attack Snax, especially because Eternal Fire have so many insane aimers that Snax is a likely target in these types of situations, and this is how you want to be using your op a decent amount of the time. By the way, cool flash. I didn't realize. Maybe this is super common. Maybe that's super common. That is a flash I haven't seen before. Whatever. You want to use your Opper. This is the way you want to use your Opper, right? Use your Opper to protect a lot of the time positions that are hard to hold for solo players, especially if it's a weaker player. Use your Opper to protect that weaker player so your opponents can't attack that bomb site quite as often. However, m0NESY off the rotate, that lurk smoke is perfect. Major just somehow wins the fight against Snax regardless, even though Snax looks like he has an advantage. Let's see. Major jumps out, looking down. Bro, he's half blind. He's still probably completely inaccurate. Is he inaccurate? Was he inaccurate? Landing. Half blind. It was close. That was close. That was close. He was close. It's hard to say exactly. But then Calyx hits a nice shot on m0NESY. I mean, m0NESY's not in a great position to actually frag out there just because of the smoke. And again, Eternal Fire play that really well. They have m0NESY gets a kill. They don't panic. They don't try and like insta rotate to the other bomb site. They delay. They smoke off so m0NESY can't hold the greatest angles of all time, and they delay so that G2 has to respect that Eternal Fire could be going to either bomb site, right? And there's enough time on the clock for Eternal Fire to go to either bomb site if they actually want to. That leaves Malbs into a 1v2. My god, dude. Okay, I take everything back. This is not G2's fault at all. G2 is like this is like Prime Fnatic. This is not even Prime Astralis. Dude, what the fuck? This Prime Astralis would like outbrain you and also shoot you in the head really effectively, okay? Prime Fnatic just ran at you and you died. Okay, this is Prime Fnatic. This is Prime who? Prime FaZe. This is Super Team 2018 FaZe, dude. This is 2019 Liquid. Why did I go with Fnatic or FaZe? This is Liquid. This is 2019 Liquid. Just run at them. I mean, the problem is that Eternal Fire is also just like making a lot of really good reads and calls, especially on their CT side. They seem to have a pretty good strat, like a pretty good game plan is what I meant to say. But still, I mean, fuck a game plan. Just shoot him in the head. G2 in the first match in this event lost to Heroic on Dust 2. And you know what Heroic did? They went B the majority of the rounds. Because they seem to think Snax is the weak link, which even if you don't think Snax is bad, even if you think he's a good IGL, even if you think as an IGL his fragging is pretty solid, he is obviously the weak link because all 4 other players on G2 are insanely good aimers, right? So you're expecting he is kind of the weak link. The question is, do they cover up for him enough? Do they give him enough support? Do they have m0NESY holding his bomb site enough? There's a lot of different options. The question would be not, is Snax the weak link? Because you know who else is the weak link? Most B players on Mirage. Karrigan, for example, is the weak link on FaZe. But I actually did the math on this. Teams don't seem to hit B against FaZe much more often than any other team. In fact, they were right. I think they were right in the middle of how often teams hit B. Partially because, again, remember, most of the time your B players, you're going to be your weaker player. That's like fairly common, although it's not guaranteed, right? But you have Karrigan, well, because I think they cover for Karrigan decently enough. Karrigan sometimes buys an AUG and just like holds this angle on top of the van or like on the ledge of the van that's actually really, really solid, and he very consistently gets kills there. He does that. It seems like Karrigan, that's one of those plays that Karrigan pulls out and in important moments. Like he doesn't want players countering that, so he doesn't pull it out very often. But when he needs to, and he knows it's a team that does this type of thing, that tries to attack him, right? I think that's one of the things he might do. But look, this is perfect. When I tell you, like, this is like one of the reasons I really like Kerrigan's calling because you can see the reasoning behind it. This is a great example of the reasoning behind calling. So they attack B. They attack B again. They attack B multiple times. And then you know what they do? They go for a B fake. They throw a bit of a B fake. And look how fast everyone bites. Look, Nico's already in towards market. m0NESY's rotating from CT. And look, Bulbs is in Palace. That's fine. But I feel like when you're watching the broadcast, it feels like a player being in Palace is a bigger deal than it is. It is a big deal, especially if the T's send a player Palace. But if the T's don't send anybody Palace, and they have a decent amount of util, Palace is actually not quite as good as you'd expect because m0NESY dies here, and they even mentioned this on the broadcast. I've mentioned this before. Where's Malbs? Where is Malbs? And by the way, when you look at that, they mollied jungle. Although, again, look, if you do it from out here, it's a lot easier. You can, in fact, get a molly. If you throw it correctly, you can get it that it goes around the corner and gets all of jungle. So they molly off jungle, they throw some utility, they push everyone out, and then they're like, where's Malbs? Oh yeah, would you look at that? He's in fucking Palace. Because where else is he gonna be? You know there's an A player, he's gotta be somewhere. He can't be nowhere. He's got to be playing A somewhere, right? And you're clearing everything out. And admittedly, I think Wakadia he does hit a nice shot here. But at about the time you clear under balcony, you clear default, you clear triple, you clear where he has to be Palace, right? So Malbs there, the thing is, he can't wait forever. If he waits forever, eventually it becomes very obvious you're in Palace. But at the same time, if you peek out at a timing like that, then you're actually not allowing you're not giving your teammates any pressure for your opponents to be worried about. So it's kind of like a catch-22, where if you peek out too early and you die, well, that sucks. But if you don't peek out at all, then it's very obvious you're in Palace, and they can do something like smoke you off. Like in this case, Eternal Fire didn't have a smoke. But in the case that Eternal Fire did have a smoke, then if Malbs waits too long, then they just smoke him off. And I mean, it's not perfect for Eternal Fire. They have to worry about an extra angle. But at the same time, it's like still, they're in a fine situation. But I don't know. I want to make probably a dedicated video on Eternal Fire because I think they just do so many things right. But at the same time, I feel like G2 was just not at all on the same page for the majority of that game, for like many situations in that game.